All right, guys, welcome to the Rainy Sunday comic book show. It is July 17th, 2022 for you guys that are in the future. and still recovering from the C19 there, but I just can't seem to settle down enough to just chill, So it looks like it's a gorgeous day with slight overcast outside, maybe a rainy Sunday. And rainy Sundays were those perfect days as a kid where you couldn't go outside. So you got a stack of comic books and you jumped on a bed and you read comics all day if you could get by with it, which was just a fantastic time. So, the worst thing about getting sick, I think, is what it does to your mind when you don't quite have all your faculties and you don't feel quite in control and your mind can go other places and stuff. That's the worst thing about getting sick. But one of the things that I've always noticed, and I actually had a talk with a comic book artist writer named Scott Shaw a couple years ago at Heroes Con. More like he had the talk and he was asking questions, and I got to listen as he held my book hostage in his hand to keep me there. It just still cracks me up. Was about how people he sort of started. He does this thing around the cons where he asks how people got into comics and stuff. And he's always surprised when I told him how I got into comics with just them being in the house with the uncle and the stepdad and having them all over the place. And I like to read to begin with. He acted like it was the wrong answer that I gave him, and kind of cracks me up looking back on it now. But his thing is that he talked about how a lot of kids from his generation, and he was talking about being in the hospital in the 50s and gave me this whole thing. I can't remember if it was his tonsils or appendix or whatever. But anyway, he was talking, maybe it was something a bit more severe. I'm not sure. But anyway, he was talking about how he finds a lot of people got into comics from being kids in the hospital. And I've always sort of been fascinated. Hey, John Jones is here. How are you, buddy? Good to see you. You jumped in here. Awesome. And but he found it. I've always liked that contradiction, I guess, is what it is. When you think about older hospitals, and I can't help it. When I think of older hospitals, I'll go straight to hospitals thinking they look like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, even though that was asylum. That sanitized yet still dirty feel, those ugly colors of those mint greens and yellows, just a real uncomfortable place. And then you had like the nurses in the white tights and in the hats, and just the whole feel of it felt a little bit medieval. And then you see the old office, all the old equipment that they used in the hospitals. Big syringes and IVs put up on like glass, and just had a whole feel where it was a psychological effect of like you would go nuts, like it's a very medieval place is what it feels like. And then all of a sudden you throw in the contradiction of a sweet little kid with his hair greased back probably, and then four color comic books in their hands sticking out in that environment and stuff, right? So there's an image in my head of that just sort of shows you that literally that comic book was probably the only color and joy you were going to get from the sanitized medieval feeling environment, where the cure can be as bad as the disease. So, yeah, I'm not dramatic at all. My mother worked in the cafeteria of a hospital in the late 70s and throughout the early 80s and stuff. So I was down in the bowels of an older hospital. And the hospital was very interesting because you had the cafeteria, you had the boiler room and the boiler room pipes all there together. And then when you went down and went about 20 feet, you were beside the morgue. They put the morgue right beside the kitchen in the cafeteria. So I saw things while I would be eating these nasty hospital cheeseburgers for free. Oh no, what happened? Did my last stream end mid-sentence? I had no idea. If it's doing that, that's a StreamYard issue. That's not a me on my end. So I hope hopefully it doesn't. I didn't realize. I think the one I did a few days ago didn't upload all the way, but I didn't know it had quit live, which means I just kept talking. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. So right now might be a good time to plug my Instagram. It usually ends up in the descriptions, but I'm just Howler Mouse on Instagram. If anything like that happens, I have my phone beside me. we start having issues to where my stream cuts off, yeah, give me a message on Instagram. Let me know. You know. So anyway, so no, I did not start collecting comics when I was in the hospital, but in 1985, um, I had a situation where my appendix. I won't go through the whole story; it was horrible. But basically, the bullet points is I think it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. TBS was showing a movie called Coma from the 70s. And in that movie, people would go into the hospital just to have simple things done like tonsils and their appendix took out, and they would go into a coma. And I think it was Douglas, one of the Douglases. I don't know. But anyway, it ended up being a big conspiracy movie where people were getting body farmed, and they found the factory, the warehouse where they would take these bodies, and everybody was in body bags with their head exposed, and there was little strings. So instead of being in a bed, everybody was just stiff as a board and hanging from the ceiling, stiff as a board. Just, really made an impact. And that night, I was in a lot of pain, but my parents waited to take me to the emergency room the next morning, and they immediately took me up to the emergency room. And from what I understand, as they were taking my appendix out, it actually exploded like when it got that far from my body. I don't know. That's what I got told. So out of all that guilt, I had people coming by the hospital for days. I was in the hospital for a week, 1985. I can't remember what was it, 12, maybe getting ready to be 13. And when I came out of being the anesthesia, I was knocked out right when I got in the elevator to go to the emergency room. Right. I was already out. So when I come to, they had taken my 10-inch black and white TV and they hooked it up to the cable, a big deal at the time at the hospital. And I wake up to Tom Petty looking at me with his top hat and Mad Hatter outfit on and sitting there saying, "Don't come around here no more," pointing at me through the TV. And I'm like, what is going on? What's happening? Now, the big thing about all this is where I was in the hospital for almost a week for appendix. I don't think it's like that anymore. But I had all kinds of people coming by and I got comic books, stacks and stacks of comic books. I think I got every comic book that was in town that week, a lot of doubles, a lot of Action Comics and stuff, right? And so I totally get how you can be in this sterile, boring environment as a kid. And then you can just engulf and digest and just like famished, just take in all these comics and be amazed with them. I remember it's where I remember I was reading Dune. I got the complete Dune miniseries along with a lot of Action Comics and DC stuff and everything, right? So there was no other kids on that floor. That's what was amazing about it. Apparently they did have a floor for kids, but for whatever reason I didn't do it. So anyway, so as a kid, that's kind of what I've always sort of like gotten met other people. What's going on? So ended up meeting with a lot of other people over the years, and I have heard how they got into comics because they were sick. Some in the hospital, some not. Strange things are afoot. So anyway, see if we can fix this. So anyway, lost one of my lights. So anyway, I go way back to, but I think you do get hooked as a kid if you were lucky with these stuff, right? And I do remember being sick in the house and being on the couch or in my bed and reading comics and going through them. And then I realized as I got old stuff, I would revisit some of those comics from when I was a kid if I was feeling sick, which is a little bit what I've done this week. Some of the first things that I read, and apparently it's affected my collecting to this. I'm still kind of piecing together the complete series. As I remember plain as day reading these are the actual comics, but this is Invaders number 20, which is now a little bit of a key book because it's the first appearance of the second Union Jack. But I remember reading the Invaders books, Master Man, Warrior Woman, Battle of Berlin here, Hitler having the invaders on a firing line right where he wants them. And all of a sudden, Union Jack 2 comes in today, but they don't know it's the second Union Jack. He could be a ghost. And you talk about being on the edge of my seat. And then they had these great, fantastic reprints of the original Submariner stories from the 40s. And I thought these were fantastic with the way they were colored and drawn. Just absolutely loved it. And I could still look at that all day. Here's number 7. But yeah, these Invaders comics, man, I have a thing, and I don't think it's because I was a kid. I think the interest came first, but I love the whole idea of the World War II superheroes. I love that era and everything. Hey, mine was by chance. I dropped my Pokemon cards in the shop's comic book box, and there he was. Okay, mine was dropped my Pokemon cards in the shop comic book. He actually dropped them in the comic book box, and there he was. Didn't catch Ghost Rider. Oh, I can definitely see how that can catch that Ghost Rider number. For that Ghost Rider number one, I can definitely see you being like, oh my god, with any of those, right? So yeah, I still held on to those, but as much as we talk about comics and everything that's going on here and stuff like that, I turn around and it was Pink Charlie Brown. This was above Superman and Batman and Spiderman and the Hulk and everything, right? I would drop everything just to read a little Snoopy. Did not call them Peanuts. There was always, and I would actually draw Peanuts and Charlie Brown all the time from memory. Looking at the Sunday funnies, the ones that were in color, and there'd be like some of these little pocket books, these little books that were black and white reprints. They got a stack over there. I should have got them out. Ended up actually winning 2 art contests when I was a kid at some summer festival they had in town, and I think at school for drawing like Charles Schultz. Crayons and everything. It was a big deal, man. It would be crayons on a blanket out in the yard. And of course, I'd always get yelled at and jumped on and afraid to ask for more crayons because I would have them all in a bucket, a white bucket bowl, maybe mixing bowl. And I would just draw the hell and color everything just all to hell. And then all of a sudden I would run in, come back out, and they'd all melted in the sun. You would have thought that they cost an arm and a leg the way everybody acted and stuff, right? So yeah, Charlie Brown was a big thing that brought a lot of comfort. I mean, I love the Sunday funnies and stuff, but Charlie Brown was above y'all. And then I actually have some of this other stuff that as a kid I've read, right? This was I gotta get a new bag for it, but this is the original one that the stepdad had in there, the Spectacular Spider-Man. There's no cover on the back of it. But yeah, this was like I read and reread and studied this when I was like about 5, the Ultimate Spider-Man Green Goblin shutdown. And just kind of show you how kids learn more from how you react and how you act. Green Goblin had some hallucinogen gas in his goblin bombs there. And when he threw it down, this actually I found out years later, was probably everybody else found out years later, was quite controversial because he started hallucinating and they started talking about LSD and Spider-Man taking drugs and stuff, right? As a kid, you know that it's a hallucinogen, halogenic. You know that it's a trap for Spider-Man. The Green Goblin's trying to kill him. It's not saying we should take LSD and drugs, right? But nobody probably would have thought that as kids and stuff if the adults weren't the ones to bring it up, right? People see what they want to see in a lot of things. Sometimes the cigar is just a cigar and not a penis. Hey, John C was here. I was actually getting worried. Gretzky is here. Fantastic, man. So if you feel like it, leave in the comments section and stuff how you got into comics. That was the whole thing. I'm just kind of showing some things I've held on to. So that Spectacular Spider-Man over the years, somewhere along the line, and I'm glad I have YouTube to document if I ever go back and rewatch some of these. Man, my lighting went out bad, didn't it? That's what we can do here. So anyway, that's going to have to do, guys. Anyway, I ended up like replacing them. And that's what I'm saying. I'm finding out that I'm replacing and upgrading a lot of things I had as a kid, even though I still have the originals, which is fantastic, right? I showed this on a stream probably somewhere along about a week or 2 ago, Uncanny Tales from the Grave. It's amazing how you can read so much as a kid and build the stories up in your head over the years. As a kid, your imagination gets ignited by this stuff. You probably have a favorite little cartoon or a little commercial jingle. It could be anything, a little comic book story that gets in the back of your head. Like, what was that? You just have like a keyhole view of it in your memory. And this was another book where there's 1 or 2 stories in here that grew in my head that were much more dramatic than what was in this, right? But this is the book that has the 10 soldiers, um, toy soldier story by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee reprinted, which I showed. But there's also a story about a pickpocket man that I absolutely love the art style. If I could draw comics, that would have been my art style. A pickpocket that had a mouse tail, and then he runs across a girl with a cat tail. And he thinks he's met a kindred spirit. And of course, these old horror stories all had a moral ending, a lesson to be learned and things, you get yours in the end. But anyway, this is the one where in my head it was a DC comic horror story, and it turns out it was a Marvel horror story this whole time. So what this has done is made me want to kind of go back and start getting a lot of these old Marvel horror stories, horror tales, the old strange tales, uncanny tales from the grave. I have a ton of House of Secretry left over from the Stepdad's collection, what I picked up over the years, beat up all to hell. Don't get me wrong, well loved and stuff, right? So it amazes me how I've read thousands of comic books, as you can see, over the years, over the decades even, and yet my mind still goes back to it as a kid. So it's no wonder a lot of people kind of try to dismiss or attach a lot of nostalgia to the hobby and stuff. So maybe I need to change my mindset a little bit, because I find it very hard to believe that just nostalgia alone will make you stick to something. It can make you have fond memories of, maybe get you into the addiction, the pattern of doing it. Hey everybody, we got all coming in, guys. So yeah, Invaders, Silver Age Spider-Man. My first X-Men that I read was issue number 3. So imagine how jarring it was to be reading some Silver Age X-Men, which I still wish I still had, some Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, and then all of a sudden there's the Yesterday Quest by art with John Byrne, and then you see John Byrne and Chris Claremont building up to the it's quite jarring to see how, and then when you think about it, the years between those books is nothing. You know what I mean? The evolution of Marvel with all the Silver Age into the Bronze Age. All right, let me know if I'm back. I lost you guys there for a few seconds. Okay, Horror Mike, greetings. I got into comics via Marvel and the Fantastic Four as a child, circa 1970. Yes. My older brother, by 2 years, was the Spidey fan. I was Fantastic Four all the way at that time. I tell many stories of my brother and I with the comics and stuff. I am back. Thank you. We're going to do this, guys. We're going to do this. Stick in there with me. All right. Hopefully this will pass. All right. So another book that got me. Now, this is what happens when you read a lot of comic books. I can easily follow continuity in my head. I think almost everybody can. I don't see what the big deal is. So when DC was talking about their universes and they're being very complicated and contradictory and stuff like that, I got some of that. But I also didn't think it was confusing. I didn't like that word confusing. I can see it being muddled. I could see them having to explain why there was 2 or 3 different cities of Atlantis in the DC universe and stuff like that. There was problems. So I get why they wanted to fix things with Crisis, but I never thought the multiple Earth idea was confusing. I mean, good God, look at it now. We're 35 years after Crisis or more, but it's definitely more, 37 years past Crisis. And now we're doing multiverse movies with Doctor Strange and stuff. So people can get it, alternate universes, right? So what has that got to do with what I'm talking about? Well, Godzilla was all over the place. On Sundays, I've talked about it many times, in the late 70s, local TV station on Sunday mornings, I would be out on my big wheel, and then my stepdad would walk across the trailer park to some buddy of his. And on Sundays, you would get a Godzilla movie and you would get a rerun of Star Trek. That's as long as I stuck around. So I'd be outside on my big wheel, rolling down the asphalt, middle of a trailer park and stuff, living my life. And I would know it's time to go watch a little Godzilla. My first Star Trek episode that I remember watching on this Sunday was the one where they were in the Wild West fighting the Earps, or they were supposed to be the Earps. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what started that. And then you had Godzilla, but you had a Saturday morning Godzilla cartoon, and you had a Godzilla comic book. It's where I became a fan of Happy Hogan. When people were watching the first Captain America movie, that blew me away, and they were doing it right. But I'm the guy in the theater sitting there like, that's the Howling Commandos, and that's Happy Hogan. I never in the world thought I would see a Happy Hogan. And I'm sure many other longtime collectors watch the Marvel movies with different eyes, looking for different things. But this is the If issue, and it's beat up. It's the same one I had as a kid, and I absolutely love this issue. I mean, it's coming apart. I'll never get rid of them. But this was like dead set in the Marvel universe, man. You had the Shield, Happy Hogan running things. They would have other characters coming from other books like J. Jonah Jameson there. I can't believe that light went out. And the Avengers, and they're all in the Fantastic Four. Everybody is like, we got to get a hold and go after Godzilla here and stuff, right? And who ends up saving the day when it comes down to it? Who ends up defeating Godzilla after you have the Avengers and everybody going after them and stuff? You end up having the Wasp in Yellow Jacket taking down Godzilla through the equilibrium. So imagine me years later in the mid 2000s when Brian Bendis is writing the scrolls, and they're trying to say that the reason that characters aren't acting like they're not in character and they're ignoring continuity and things are getting weird in the Marvel books, that they're saying that it's scrolls. So they come out with Secret Invasion, and they end up having a team of heroes in the Savage Land that just happens the same. Oh man, it was random characters, Wolverine, Miss Marvel, and a few of Captain Marvel, whatever, Warbird at the time, whatever. They had a whole bunch of random characters, Marvel characters in the now. Just happened to be in the Savage Land where a ship that had gotten lost by the Skrulls come out, and it's a bunch of Skrulls dressed up as the exact same 5 or 6 characters. So we can see the 70s versus the 90s. And I think their intention was to try to show how much cooler comics were now, and I think it had the opposite effect. But they're about to have this big battle, and all of a sudden a Tyrannosaurus Rex just runs in between them for no reason, and they bust up, and everybody like runs and regroups and hides. And I'm sitting here like, I'm sorry, but my Marvel superheroes can take down Godzilla. What the hell is this T-Rex going to do? You know what I'm saying? I was just like, oh my God. So yeah, reading comics for a long time and then finding like a little moment in comics like that makes it feel unreadable. I'm like, these guys have never read comic books when they were kids. Why are they even writing them? And you can't help be that way. It's not negative and pessimistic and trying to trying to hope that wish comics wouldn't change or go back, whatever excuse you want to have. It's not being stuck in an era or of comics and stuff like that. It's you recognize lazy writing when you see it, and you call it out. If you pay for mediocrity, people are going to keep making mediocrity. And at my age, I have no time for mediocrity. Yeah. All right. We got all kinds of people here, man. Okay. Little Jimmy Fireball. I got into comics because of Werewolf by Night. Plug. I hope it was Mike Plug. Don Perlin was awesome. Don't get me wrong. I like the Wolfman from Abbott and Costello. Oh yeah. Yeah. I have my Abbott and Costello DVD collection somewhere. I love those Universal monster movies also, and that is one of the best. What we got here? We had Godzilla's on Saturday. We had Godzilla movies on Saturday. That's awesome, man. All right, man. So fantastic. So some of the other things that were in the house, and I have on this shelf, I have so many new reviewers. I don't feel like I'm a broke record now and stuff. Different some different people come in, and some of you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about here, right? So, out of those comic books as a kid, I was talking about and stuff like that. Um, I kept the ones that really stuck out in my head the most. I mean, I've kept these books, but I have upgrades and the originals, and I'll never get rid of them. So I always have a section on a shelf to where I can just grab these books from when I was a kid, the ones I remember in a stack in a pile and reading them, right? And now this is a little bit later, 78. Yeah, I always seem to think that for some reason this is an 1980 book, and it's not. It's 1978, right? But we have the original, and I had the upgrade. But what if Conan, um, the Barbarian, walked the earth today? So when Marvel, again, I go all the way back to a few years ago, man. Marvel, to me, the Bronze Age in my mind, and I don't argue the point. It's widely accepted that the Bronze Age of comics started with the death of Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. What was that? 122. You know, take away my Spider-Man card for not knowing off the top of my head anymore. But anyway, but to me, it was when Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith Conan #1, and for some reason in my mind that seems like a better place for a better bench stone in history of, maybe it's where it's more positive and innocent, you know what I mean? But anyway, but that's Marvel, man. You know, Marvel will bum you out sometimes when you read them. We keep going back for punishment. But what if Conan walked the earth? You almost caught me. I was about to like raise hell. But anyway, but this was when Marvel got the license back a couple years ago. They started having Conan interact with the Marvel universe, and I'm like shaking my head. So they have recently lost the license again. I don't know the behind the scenes things, but to me, it's a good thing. A lot of people have told me that what they did with Conan was actually pretty good. Good, fine, awesome. Okay. But this was a time where, due to in story, Roy Thomas, John Buscema came up with this fantastic story here. And what's really great about this is that he is in the Marvel universe. He's in the Earth today, if you will, but he doesn't interact with other heroes, and it's done in story to where it makes sense. Um, and what happens? Roy Thomas was dating this girl named Danny, redheaded Danny there. She ends up hooking up with Conan in this, and then Roy Thomas ended up marrying her. I've always had a thing where, knowing that he ended up marrying the chick that he based his character on, named her after, that he had her sleep with Conan. Always I had a chance to ask him that probably like 20 years ago at Heroes Con to bring it up. And I just kind of put the book back in the bag and was like, this could be an awkward talk in front of everybody. And then when I got up there, I discovered that you listen to Roy Thomas and his fantastic stories. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. That's one of the reasons I think this stuck out in my mind, is when I found out that he based the character off his girlfriend. Hey, man, I'm going to put you in a comic book and you get to hook up with a barbarian, man. We got another one here. That's right, man. Guys keep talking about how, let us know how you got into comics. I got into comics in 1990 from years of watching cartoons and reading the Sunday's Funnies at 11 or 12. Yet I got my first books as Marvel books mostly, and due to the Batman movie, I wanted more comics. Fantastic, man. I love it. What we got here? The newer Conan stuff is meh. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. It started off pretty good, but slipped pretty quick. That's Marvel nowadays. It was still creepier when Dan Slott did it in the Silver Surfer. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Breen. That's right. That's awesome. That's fantastic, right? So, as a kid, and being sick, I actually remember watching Saturday Night Live one night when I was being sick, and my grandmother was at the house, and it was that survival kit that you had as a kid when you did get sick. It was Sprite, probably crackers, methylate, even though you probably didn't have a cut on you. Oh man, what else was it? Crackers, methylate, Sprite. That was the big one. Um, oh man, a peroxide in a tweezer. I mean, I don't know, man. So anyway, when you're sitting there dying and you've thrown up so much as a kid that you're like dry heaving and stuff, right? Of course, you're going to be drinking Sprite, eating crackers, and watching Saturday Night Live as a kid, right? But at the same time, I remember seeing it had to be a rerun. It had to be a rerun, but I saw the Richard Pryor. Maybe it wasn't Saturday Night Live. No. I saw Star Wars. Getting my Richard Pryor and my Bill Murray messed up. How that happens, I don't know. But I saw Bill Murray doing Star Wars, his Star Wars skit where he's the lounge singer singing Star Wars in the Star Wars bar, I guess. Richard Pryor was in the Star Wars bar. I'm getting off of this. I have C19 right now, guys. So I have the brain fog. So as a kid, I've always held that when it comes to pop culture and possibly the world, um, you had pre-Star Wars and after Star Wars. I'm telling you, that's a linchpin in our history. I will die on that hill, right? So, you know, imagine being a 5-year-old kid and you see Star Wars for the first time proper, your perfect age, the perfect time to love all that stuff and to get it and be blown away. And then all of a sudden you find this Thor in your house. Again, the original that was in the house and my upgrade. And you discover the Guardians of the Galaxy. Thor is really quickly thrown into the future, and he is discovered by the Guardians of the Galaxy, a la the Avengers finding Captain America. What was it, Avengers #4 or something there, where Captain America was frozen. Well, Thor ends up being an iceberg floating in space, and they bring him into their ship, and I like the parallel there. Lin Wine did very, very good. And then all of a sudden, man, you find all these aliens and stuff like that, man. The sci-fi was well into action thanks to Star Wars. And this is still one of my favorite, not just Thor stories, one of my favorite comic book stories. I read this thing and it's got everything in it: action, adventure, jokes, laugh, nuclear threats, everything. It's all there, man. Everything that, makes you have stakes and everything. And of course, we have Thor talking all Shakespearean there, right? It's fantastic stuff, right? Oh, I got some of these floating around and stuff, right? But one of the books that actually fascinated me were things like Super Goofy. I wish I Super Goofy. I don't know why I don't have more Little Monsters. These odds and end books that were not from the big two. I was figuring out names and in books and things. You don't jump in here and know everything about comics, and it's complete blank slate. So the idea that there were older companies and stuff, older comics and companies, and didn't really register, right? But I still have this, man. But out of nowhere, in the middle of the books, we had Herbie in the spirits and stuff, right? And I was like, what the hell is going on in this book? Yet I kept reading this book over and over. I would look at the pictures. I like the crisp art. I was like, why is this not bigger? I'm a fan of like Al Williamson, a little bit of Kurt Swan and stuff, but I like that. And John Romita, because of that crisp, clean style that they had in storytelling, the control they had. So it was basically the art that made me think this was like a big deal book, because the art is so good. But why have I never heard of it? And I tried to bring it up to a few people over the years, and they just looked at me really weird, like I was just this weird kid. But there's nothing like having the power of God through eating lollipops, I guess. I don't know, but I loved it. It stuck in my head. I've picked up a few Herbie over the years. But this book, Charlton, guys, right? This book, and I hope I have an upgrade somewhere, or it was a reprint, man, but this Creepy Things. This was the first comic book that I read. Now, I talk about growing up in a trailer park, living in a trailer park as a kid, right? I didn't just live in a trailer park, right? I lived in a mud hole full of clay and shell ground. I went back and visited a couple years ago, and they finally had some grass here and there and stuff, right? But we had all these woods to play in. We had the Clinch River going through the town, so you had a swampy area, and that swampy area would have the stink of sulfur, dirt, cattails, rotting vegetation. So when I read the story in Creepy Things of this little kid finding a little monster, and he's found it in the swamp combined with the swamp, when I was reading this, you could smell the swamp on this hot summer day, to where it added an extra layer of storytelling on this. I'm not being exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. So the story is called Slimes, Slogs, and Glumps. In this story, this artwork, everything will be with me forever, because the kid finds this weird creature in the swamp and he brings it home and things happen, right? But what gets me is that the artwork in this, I need to go back and look at Marvel Comics Presents, because whoever the artist is on this, and I need to look it up, it's probably listed. It just has the script. It doesn't say who the artist is. I might need to look it up. But years later, in Marvel Comics Presents, there was a storyline in the early issues, somewhere in the first year or two of Marvel Comics Presents, the one that was weekly, started in the late 80s to the 90s. But I swear there was an artist doing a Man-Thing story in that where I was convinced it was the same dude. So, I mean, look at the well-loved of this. This is one of those books I would grab if there was a fire in this house to make sure I got it out. Even though it's not worth anything and it's beat up, this is one of those books that would have to be the one I had, not the replacement and stuff, right? Because it made me want to, it creeped me out. The smell of the swamp adds to the memory of it. So I always remember the first time I read that. And it's the first time I felt grossed out, kind of like going to a early 70s horror movie that you see at the drive-in and feel like you need to go home and take a shower because it's so gritty. You can feel the, texture. What do we got here? Eric Brain, do you have the Herbie Flaming Carrot crossover? No, and I definitely have to have it now. I didn't even know that existed, Brain. So thank you. Looks like I'll be going on eBay after this. Or my comic shop. I have to have that. Oh my gosh. Oh. I buy Super Goof every chance that I get. Super Goof and Little Monsters. Those are my two little treats. Yep. Yeah. The C19 definitely sucks. Yeah. I'm experiencing it right now, and I'm going to stick in with this. All right. We got more stories. We got Gretzky, 1992. I became a collector with Justice League of America 69 and finding out Superman died. I was actually working at a comic book shop when that happened. And I also I hitchhiked for 9 months around this time. And finding out Superman died in 1997 and 98, I stopped collecting Superman because of Red and Blue. That was horrible. Collected Spiderman, Fantastic Four, Hulk, and more. I tell you what, man, coming in at the 90s, I'm glad you're still here because I can totally get how overwhelming it could have been when this was an era when they had, if a comic book shop bought every book that was being put out there, it would have been 800 books a month there for a short time. So I totally get that. Everybody was wanting their own universe and to jump on. In 2010, I met this guy that owned a store and in the mall selling comics, got me interested in getting books again. In 2011, I started buying again and have not looked back. Awesome. Glad you're still with us. Flaming Carrot issue 330, Flaming Carrot issue 31, I think. Awesome. Excuse me while I write this down, folks. That will be mine. Thank you, Breen. All right, I got homework when I get off here. We got here 1997 to 2011. I did buy Superman. I love Superman. I have a ton of Superman. I got 2-3 long boxes of Superman, and I still think, as much as I love Superman, there's a Marv Wolfman, Gil Kane era through Action Comics and stuff in the early 80s. The John Byrne stuff. I love the 60s stuff. I love the Silver Age 60s Superman stuff, right? So, yeah, I love Superman. Oh, he didn't buy. 97 to 2011, didn't buy. Gotcha. I'm just glad you're back, man. So now we kind of get up to where I started buying. Oh, well, there's one more here, right? And all day long, right here. Now, that is a version of the Molecule Man and Iron Man and Man-Thing, right? Steve Gerber. This is probably the book that made me a Steve Gerber fan. This is one of the few times I can actually clearly remember wanting to know who wrote this as a kid when I'm reading this, right? This is from 1976, so it's probably 78 or 79 I was reading this. And of course, I have the upgrade I got, right? The Iron Man Annual number 3. To me, this is one of those stories that was ahead of its time. There's a lot of Steve Gerber, that I think was ahead of its time, especially with this one. The way he handled the Man-Thing, he made sense. He got the plot going. It wasn't a big deal. He had the Molecule Man possess a little girl. So we got into this weird uh, uh, gender thing of like, whoa, they're really mixed, and all this stuff, right? But what was amazing about this that got me as a little kid is I was a little kid, probably, I feel like I was the age, but there's these three kids, two boys and a girl, dressed like two heroes and a villain, hanging out in the swamp. He finds the Molecule Man's actual wand that he's thrown his soul in or whatever, and the little kid drops it in the swamp. And when the little girl tells everybody that they're too wimpy to go get it, she'll get it. She gets in the swamp, gets attacked by an alligator, and what do the boys do? As she's running from the alligator and the man thing comes out and saves her, just for her to fall into quicksand. And let's face it, we are the generation of people that thought quicksand was going to be more of a problem when we got older. She dies, and the kids just get on their bikes and run and leave her butt. Yeah, that's Friends, man. Goonies don't do that shit. So as a kid, that was one of the major things that really tore me up as a kid. Kids don't do that to other kids, man. It was like, I was like, no, you don't do that. And I was already thinking about like I would beat their ass the next time I saw them, and all this stuff, right? The only other book that really gave me that big of an emotional distress was an issue of Fantastic Four where Ben Grimm is fighting Darkoth, a purple sci-fi demon looking dude who turns out is his best friend from the Air Force. I don't know if they grew up together and stuff like that. But while Ben Grimm, the Thing, and Darkoth were fighting and stuff like that, Darkoth was sitting there going, he doesn't know that I'm his ex-best friend. And at 5, 6 years old, I'm sitting here thinking, that's your best friend. That was the hook. That was so much distress, man. I think I actually remember like standing on my tiptoes like, no, you're fighting your best friend. Okay. And now we're getting into the 80s here. Check out the newest issue of Comic Book Creator 28, Steve Bissett and Swamp Thing. I hope I have that pre-ordered. Yeah, I have Rick Vetch and I think Stephen Bissett both on Facebook, and they'll give you a heads up on stuff like that. So 1979, I was the kid that would go through the change. Let me go through this again. I was the kid that would go through the couches hunting for change. I would go through the big piled up pyramid of laundry that would never get done. I would go out and recycle bottles on my big wheel and sneak across the road where I wasn't supposed to cross the road to the national market and turn in bottles and stuff. I'd ride around on that big wheel I was telling you about with my little basket getting bottles. And for years in my head, I was the entrepreneur. I thought I was out there on the weekends and finding all these bottles to get some, trade in and get change back on. And I thought I was just like kick ass because I always had a successful weekend. It wasn't until years later I realized that the older folks on the street were actually leaving the damn bottles out for me. It clicked just a few years ago. So we're going, close to 40 years of having a false memory of false confidence. You know what I mean? And I'm like, those old people were leaving those bottles for me. So bless their hearts. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I would get the pinball machine. Okay, right beside of us was this store that had a pinball machine. I would get my Kiss cards, Superman, some candy, a peach knee high, a milk crate, and I would play the pinball machine with the rolling numbers on it. And just because I watched the Bad News Bears, Kelly would So now that I'm back, so the whole point is I finally made it out to a store, and wouldn't you know it, I've had to figure this out how this happened. But this was the first comic book in 1979 that I bought, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And you're going to see it's a Whitman variant. What happens is that I have a video called Where Little Howler Mouse Bought His Comics, and you can see where the drugstore used to be, the Raven Drugstore. And that felt like a world away when it was only just a couple miles, right? You never really got down there. And in your head, that's where you thought you found the best comics because you couldn't get there, right? So I got this and I had to figure this out because I remember distinctly buying this with my own money, 40 cents at the time. Yet it's a Whitman variant. And I finally figured out that what the dude did is that he would pop open, he would make more money. You get these 3 for $1. So the guy at the that ran the Raven drugstore apparently had figured out he could make 30 more cents, I guess. 20 more cents, 20 more cents. If he opened up the 3-pack and sold them for 40 cents a piece, he would make 20 more cents. I guess that's how you stay in business. I don't know. So yeah, the 3-pack that this came in had to have been opened and put up there. So yeah, there you go, man. But that is my first comic I bought with my money. Now for years, and until the internet came and the message board, one of the first things I kind of posted on a comicbook.com or whatever it is, the message boards, was why would you let a little kid play with something that had a super space needle on the top of it that could put his eye out, and everybody would be like, forget that. What the hell is Cosmo Boy wearing? That Mike Grell Rocky Horror Picture Show outfit, if you will. That's what bothered people. That's when I knew that I was a little different. I'm like, so, when that didn't bother me at all, and it still doesn't. All right, so then a couple years later, for more bang for my buck, I would always be cheap and all that stuff like that. For more bang for my buck, I would start buying books by team. What had more stories in it? What was the better deal? And I ended up getting these adventure comics. I would run in there and get them because you would get all sorts of reprints and stuff. And after seeing the reprints in the 70s books and things like that, we have Golden Age and Silver Age, fantastic Golden Age Spectre stories. I love this Ray story that's in here. I still remember these. You got you some Jim Aparo. But see, I love expressive art like this. The whole tone of the Ray was jazz. So yeah, so the artwork even reflected that. You knew it was from a different era and stuff, right? So I'd get a bunch of these. Issue 500 was actually stolen by the stepdad. I kid you not. They were split up at the time, and I don't know how he got a hold of it. But yeah, he stole it. And this is where I started getting like my comic history and stuff. And as a kid, these feel so cool. That's why they are actually red. And then artwork started coming out. Warlord. All of a sudden, Warlord was already in the house, but I was coming into my own when I was starting to see things like this. And I had the He-Man figures, but I also had the 3 Warlord figures that came out that were in He-Man style. Demos, Hercules, and Warlord. And I would actually take pieces of cloth and make clothes for my action figures. They were action figures, damn it. And then it happened. I knew things were happening when I got The Flash. I felt like this was like my first key book, right? Now, a year before all of this, I can go on showing and talking about them, right? But I didn't really consider myself a collector until 1982 with the Justice League 207. I didn't pull it out. It's already packed up and everything like that. But 207, because it crossed over with All-Star Squadron. I was already reading All-Star Squadron because it was a World War II book. And I was putting together that this dude, Roy Thomas, must really know World War II. I'm like 8 years old, guys, recognizing, knowing names and stuff, right? But then there's things that were like plotting out the future there for me in the future. The Doom Patrol. I found this Doom Patrol. It's beat up and tore up now. Now you'll notice that these are well loved, but they're still together. But you'll notice this is the one that's fallen apart because I read and reread this. I could not figure. To this day, I've never figured out what the hook was with the Doom Patrol that got me. And then over the years, I would pick up things and not be quite sure why I wanted them and stuff, right? But it's because the stepdad and the uncle had Neil Adams in the house. I had the original Strange Adventure books in there. I had to dig and figure out pre-internet these books that were in my head that I was trying to remember. And these reprint the original Strange Adventures, Neil Gaiman. These are reprints, of course. Luckily, they started coming out with a bunch of Baxter series that I would get years later on, reprinting those stories and stuff, right? But the biggest thing that hooked me was this book right here, Superman and Spiderman. This was the book that I studied read and reread, went down the line on the credits, trying to, picking out everybody who was working on this book, everything that happened in them. That was a long 3 months, through the 2 to 3 months, the entire time between whether it be first grade and second grade for me. I studied this book that whole summer, every chance I got. Before that, it was this, and this is a replacement because these fell apart. But jumping on a bed, being a little kid, and having a comic book the size of you was fantastic. I've recently, over the last couple of years, I made sure to get the Fantastic Four books that are reprinted in these Treasury editions. A couple of stories in this one. I cannot remember if I had the Treasury edition, but I definitely had a lot of the stories that were in there. But the biggest thing in the house was two things: Conan and Jack Kirby. Going into the Conan movie when I was a kid, that movie came out in 82, I think, 81, the Oliver Stone one. I knew that I was in such a zeitgeist of reading the Conan comics, the Savage Sword of Conan, mostly the magazines, that I knew we were going to have something in the movie that was from the comics. It was weird. I knew it was going to be there. And it was this scene right here. I knew that this was going to be in the Oliver Stone movie when I went to the theater. I don't know how. Wasn't a trailer, wasn't from a TV commercial, but I just knew. And if this scene had not been in the Conan movie, I may have well been disgusted and still bitching about it to this day. All right. So, yeah, just a little bit of comic book talk. Want to know how people got into comics? That's the biggest thing. So stick it in the comments if you want. I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I hope I'm doing okay here because I feel like crap right now, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now. So what do we got here? Graphic Man is shown up. Comic Crack is here. I love the digest. I wish my eyesight still allowed me to enjoy them with my youthful enthusiasm. I feel you, man. I think it's unreal that I have access to all these comics. I've accumulated a lot of these comics, and I've often wondered about going ahead and sizing down the collection. Like, what am I actually going to read in my lifetime? But I think it's kind of sad that apparently the last 5 to 6 years, it's like you don't have time to read. It's amazing as much as you want. So you have all these comics. Now you don't have the time. We need more rainy Sundays. Comic Crack is here. What's up, brother? If you got time, stick in how you got into comics down here, guys. We'll be winding up in a little bit. We're coming up on the 1 hour mark. I feel like, okay, Graphic Man, not to shoot off the thing here if you're still out there, man, but I might try to make it on Wednesday if I can get past this stuff. Hopefully. How funny. Okay, dudes. I think that's going to be it. But anyway, if you're watching this in the future, make sure you like it, subscribe it, share it, let people know we're here and everything like that. And then in the comment section, I don't usually do this very often, but if you want to, man, leave. I like reading this stuff. I mean, it'll be mostly for me, but leave a comment about how you got into comics and stuff, right? So everybody have an excellent day. As always, as I do with these streams with this C19, I think I'm going to go take a nap. This wears you out. Later.